Encounters of the fourth kind are increasing worldwide. When looking at the reports made to the many UFO research organizations, including the Intruders Foundation, the UFO Reporting Center, the Center for UFO Studies, and the Mutual UFO Network, it seems obvious. The problem is that some of these alien abduction claims aren't investigated by the larger organizations because many reports sound too incredible to believe. At least one of the organizations mentioned above released a statement that they would not investigate wild or bizarre claims in the interest of keeping the study of UFOs respectable and scientific. When I read about their new policy, I thought, come on guys, really, there's little science in what we do already. You're looking for spaceships and aliens on Earth, and you want respect from the scientific community? It's not going to happen in this day and age. That's from Encounters of the Fourth Kind, Chapter 4, in Ultra-Terrestrial Contact by Philip J. Imbrogno, a paranormal investigator's explorations into the hidden abduction epidemic. Phil Imbrogno is a longtime researcher in UFO studies and the paranormal, and he's going to be my guest on Blog Talk Radio this week, Friday, April 8th, from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. That's Blog Talk Radio. The link is in the description box for the video. So join us for some talk on high strangeness in UFO abductions and other paranormal phenomenon, which is one of his investigative strong suits. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Stench of Truth. I want to make a couple of brief comments just to illustrate a few things to you. First, the rioting and murders conducted by people in Afghanistan concerning the Koran burning incident. I only really have one thing to say about this. I don't know who is more stupid, who is more manipulated, and who is more of a fool in this entire scenario. The idiot who decided to burn the Koran, or the complete morons who murdered people because somebody burned a fucking book. It's a book. It's a book. And while we can be outraged because someone has decided to destroy a book simply for the fact that it represents a collection of research and knowledge and history, and in this case, it is a collection of spiritual material that we look at and we look to for some kind of guidance if we happen to be Muslims. The real issue here is it's just a fucking book. And while the moron who decided to burn it is a complete moron, knowing that his actions were likely to spark this type of outrage, the idiots who went and fulfilled that prediction, if you will, are just as much a bunch of foolish fucking assholes, as far as I'm concerned, and now murderers, because somebody burned a book. Second issue, and I have talked about this repeatedly, and I want to make this clear to you so you understand, and I'll put it into perspective further. The Federal Reserve, when it released information by court order, when it released information about what banks it lent money to, that should have illustrated to everybody that the Federal Reserve does not serve the interests of the United fucking States. It is a global institution. And furthermore, the Federal Reserve has no interest, none whatsoever, to help individual states in this country and municipalities who are suffering from drastic economic problems that were exacerbated and in most cases completely caused by Wall Street banks that the fucking Federal Reserve bailed out. So, do you understand what this means? Okay? Not only were the Wall Street banks and finance companies bailed out by tax fucking dollars that you paid for, the Federal Reserve, that is a U.S. agency, issued more money to those very same banks that ultimately we are going to have to pay for. And now, because pension funds are in the tank around the country for having been frauded into buying fraudulent fucking securities that lost them a tremendous amount of money by these very same Wall Street fucking finance companies and banks, now they are cutting essential services to everybody within their states and municipalities. So who is footing that bill again? Us. So what does this mean? We have been raped 3 fucking times by the Federal Reserve, by the taxpayer bailouts, and by the municipalities and states who now want to cut our fucking programs. All to support the fucking Wall Street shills, thieves, robbers, and bankers. And further on top of that, the Federal Reserve lent money to overseas banks that have absolutely nothing to do with the United fucking States. And they could, if they wanted to, they could provide funding to every fucking state in this country and to municipalities to fund bond issuances so that there could be full funding for all programs for people. And all it would take would be some fucking backbone in Congress by the fucking assholes who say they represent us, but who don't. They represent the interests of Wall Street and the fucking rich. And let me point out also that the Federal Reserve lent money to GE, the same fucking company who paid no fucking taxes on $5 billion in profit and received a rebate on top of that. Isn't it lovely? So, what can be done? Well, nationalizing the Federal Reserve, obviously, but in the interim, prior to major shakeups and this sort of thing, if the Federal Reserve is a federal agency, if it is under the auspices of the United States government, and if it is supposed to serve the interests of the fucking United States, then the congressional assholes should decide to direct the Federal Reserve to immediately provide funding to states and municipalities to fund all of the programs that are imminently going to be cut to prevent us from being fucked 3 times to pay for Wall Street. Do you understand that? 3 times we have been raped, and not once have these people been called to pay anything, let alone their fair share. And that brings me to the last story, and this is courtesy of Mother Jones via Bernie Sanders. And he had a press release, which would have been, the March 27th, where he talks about the 10 worst corporate income tax avoiders. Okay, well, first he talks about the death tax, and he gives the example of the Walton family of Walmart fame, who, whenever they repealed the death tax, got a $30 billion tax break. But that shouldn't concern us, because we're having all of our Medicaid and everything else cut. And this is the 3rd time we've been called to bail out these fuckers. We're bailing out the rich, do you understand? We bailed them out with the taxpayer-funded bailout. we will have to pay for the Federal Reserve bailout. And we're paying a third time by all of the cuts. You understand? 3 times we have been fucked by the rich and by Wall Street. 3 times. Not only do they not pay their fair share, they don't even pay anything. Goldman Sachs pays 1%. And they give their CEOs hundreds of billions of dollars. Okay, so let's see. Here's the tax avoiders list, courtesy of Mother Jones and Bernie Sanders. Number 1, ExxonMobil. In 2009, they made $19 billion in profits. They paid no federal income tax and received a $156 million rebate from the IRS. 2, Bank of America received a $1.9 billion tax refund from the IRS, although it made $4.4 billion in profits. They received a bailout from the Federal Reserve and the Treasury Department of nearly $1 trillion. 3, over the past 5 years, GE made $26 billion in profits, and it received a $4.1 billion refund from the IRS. 4, Chevron received a $19 million refund from the IRS last year after it made $10 billion in profits in 2009. 5, Boeing received a $30 billion contract from the Pentagon and got a $124 million refund from the IRS. 6, Valero Energy, the 25th largest company in America with $68 billion in sales last year, received a $157 million tax refund check from the IRS. Over the past 3 years, it received a $134 million tax break from the oil and gas manufacturing tax deduction. 7, Goldman Sachs in 2008 only paid 1.1% of its income in taxes, even though it earned a profit of $2.3 billion and received an almost $800 billion from the Federal Reserve and U.S. Treasury Department. 8, Citigroup last year made more than $4 billion in profits but paid no federal income tax and received $2.5 trillion in a bailout from the Federal Reserve and U.S. Treasury. 9, ConocoPhillips, the 5th largest oil company in the U.S., made $16 billion in profits from 2007 to 2009, but received $451 million in tax breaks through the oil and gas manufacturing deduction. 10, over the past 5 years, Carnival Cruise Lines made more than $11 billion in profits, but its federal income tax rate during those years was just 1.1%. Compare that to the tax rate you pay, people. I guarantee you, your fucking rate is nowhere near 1.1 fucking percent. And you try not to pay your taxes and see how quick you are hauled into the fucking IRS for a fucking audit. Now, some people have questioned the idea of whether or not you can tax corporations because they'll go overseas. Well, as far as I'm concerned, if you conduct business in this fucking country as a corporation, you have to, number 1, show that you serve the public interest. That was the founding principle of incorporation. And you're not serving the public interest in this country by raping the fucking taxpayers. My solution for corporations is to bring up for review the incorporation status of all corporations in this country by Congress. If they do not serve the public interest, the corporation is fucking dissolved. And therefore, they are subject to all of the other penalties that can befall them. Corporations allow these people to avoid certain asset forfeiture and losses by taking the blame away from CEOs and individuals who run these companies. Subject them to lawsuits directly and see how quick they change their fucking tunes. If they do serve the public interest, you can keep your incorporation status, but we are going to have a new corporate tax strategy. You start out with a very high tax rate. And then you calculate deductions based on real job creation. Actual jobs! Not fantasy jobs, real jobs. Not CEO jobs, real jobs. And for every so many jobs that are created or maintained over a year period, you get a tax deduction. Anytime you build a manufacturing plant in the United States that hires United States workers to produce fucking products, you get a tax deduction. Anytime you expand operations in this country and increase production and or manufacturing tangibly, not by fantasy, you get a tax deduction. Anytime you invest overseas in anything or go offshore for anything, you get a tax increase. Simple as that. And if you decide to leave the fucking country, then you get levied with an incredibly high importation tariff for abrogating your responsibilities as a corporation. So you pay anyway. The fact remains that these businesses have to do business in the United States. And if they decide to offshore completely, then they should be tariffed. Because they have in effect said that they refuse to be accountable as a corporation. Therefore, they should be made to pay more. And this is fundamentally what this is all about. Everybody talks about cuts. I want to talk about revenue in the sense that we should be getting more revenue from the people who have completely failed to have any responsibility and have raped the U.S. taxpayer 3 times now. How many more times will we be raped before we decide to say no more? Thank you.